All right, good afternoon, everyone. You've tuned in to Beyond the Forecast, a live look at Salamanca where it's sunny, little haze. Certainly not the haze we had a couple days ago. We're going to get more into that coming up. But welcome. It's Monday, July 20th. I'm Patrick Hammer.
I'm Lauren Maroney, and I feel so spoiled. I have Patrick Hammer in the studio with
Yes,
me today.
we had to shut down the Hamburg Bureau for a day. You know, lots of installations going in, but we'll reopen soon enough.
Good. No, I'm glad you can be here. It's always a pleasure to talk to you in person.
Hey,
that
listen,
delay.
well, here's the best part for me is that when I am doing the show from Hamburg, I can't always see with a big screen your amazing graphics, and oftentimes they include equations. And today, I think, is one of those days, right?
Not necessarily an equation,
Okay.
just a correlation. It's not a hard equation, but just how something is directly proportional to something else.
Bottom line. Awesome lessons, awesome descriptions of what's coming. Today, you're going to talk about smoke, a fairly relevant topic.
Yeah, I think, we talk a lot about how that affects our air quality and how that affects our health, which is so important. But I kind of like to get into the more science-y aspect of it. Obviously, you see how that smoke affects our sky, but you may not know why. And why is it sometimes white? Why is it sometimes orange?
Right.
And kind of getting more into that.
And we all see it from the ground. I did have the experience of being able to fly home from Texas. Anyway, when we landed, it was crazy. You're flying over the south, everything's fine, you could see crystal clear, and all of a sudden we hit this like wall. The plane was flying above it, but you look down and it looked like just a cloud cover. And then we dove into it, and it just was like, it wasn't like flying into a cloud with like white puffy clouds. This was like this gray, sooty look from the air.
It gets really messy.
It does. All right, Lauren's going to have more on that coming up. We're going to talk about our weather, which, by the way, is going to feature some change this week. But I think maybe the two biggest takeaways is, A, the smoke is gone for now. Good news. And much of this week is going to be very comfortable temperature-wise. Heat and humidity levels, which have been elevated much of this month, are really taking a break this week. So we start with today. Sunny 70s, beautiful. A little bit of a haze out there, but still lots of sunshine and very comfy numbers this morning. I don't know if you were up early. If you were, we were in the 50s. Doesn't happen often in July to have. In fact, Bradford was down to 43 this morning. We did have some 40s showing up. Tomorrow, though, the weather gets a little turbulent. It's the one day this week where we're going to have some, potential significant weather to track in the form of thunderstorms. That'll be tomorrow. More on that coming up. And then, as I had said, looking ahead, dry and comfortable for the remainder of the week. Wednesday will actually feel fallish, okay? Where temperatures will be in the 60s to around 70 with some low hanging clouds. So, and maybe even an isolated sprinkle or a shower on Wednesday, but generally comfortable though with our temperatures closer to 70 versus 80. Today, 77. Tonight, with additional cloud cover, we're going to be in the mid 60s. That's not as cool as it was this morning. It'll be warmer because of that cloud cover. And tomorrow, scattered thunderstorms. It appears that we're going to see a few showers, light showers in the morning, and then a better chance of stronger storms in the afternoon. Okay, I mentioned air quality, which we were tracking, of course, all last week, and we had numbers. Do you remember, Lauren, what the highest number do you think was last week?
It was a day where I wasn't working.
You weren't working?
So I don't know.
I think it was like around 2.
I do think we got in the 200s.
We did, yeah, that is for sure. And I'm trying to recall what our highest number was 3 years ago when this happened, if you all remember. I think we did get briefly above or close to 300, yeah. But either way, it's still in the unhealthy or very unhealthy zone. Now we're at 60. So we had good air quality this morning. It's gotten into the low range and the moderate range, the low values of a moderate range. So air quality, not perfect, but again, it is better. Now, this is a quick preview a look back, if you will, of Saturday. Of course, Saturday did feature some thunderstorms. If you were in Niagara, Orleans County, those are the two counties in our area that took the brunt of the storms, and also down into Chautauqua County. But again, numerous reports of trees down, power lines down. In fact, some scary looking skies. Here's a look of some video taken of this is so cool. You look up and it's just a very mercurial sky, and you can actually see the clouds. This is near Ripley, appearing like they're kind of rotating a little bit. You know, you can get these little rotations. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a tornado, but you can get little rotations in these clouds and in the storms themselves. And if they get strong enough, you can get a tornado. There were a couple of tornado warnings in our area. No confirmed tornado, but I will admit we saw a piece of video earlier today from Niagara Falls that was taken Saturday that looked like a brief tornado. Okay, but notice all the storm reports as the storms that day kind of arced down from Toronto, moving through Niagara, Orleans, down into Livingston, Monroe County, and then down into the Finger Lakes. What was interesting too is that Erie County, by and large, was spared. Wyoming County as well, because of the stiff breeze off the lake, kind of put a kibosh on the thunderstorms in Erie County. That can happen, not all the time, but when you have surface-based thunderstorms, that can happen if the lake, you get a cool lake. But what's interesting is we're getting now into that season as the lake temperature warms, the influence of the lake kind of becomes a little less as we get warmer, get deeper into the warm season. Okay, the next system we're watching is a front, a pretty strong one at that, meaning the temperature difference behind it and in front of it is larger than the front we just dealt with. And that could spell for some changeable weather tomorrow and certainly some cooler weather by Wednesday. More on that in a second. We're watching too a tropical system, Tropical Depression 2. If she decides to grow, and that's very likely, she will become Bertha, okay? Oh, I don't know why I had the track on here. Let's see if I got it. There we go. Okay, the track takes it to, on its current path, very close to Louisiana, just south of New Orleans, which would put New Orleans kind of on the unfavorable side of this system. If you've got counterclockwise direction of the wind, and luckily the winds don't look too strong with this, that would pile up more of the water in towards, just kind of eyeballing this would make sense, more of a southerly flow on the north end of the storm, which could cause some water level rises. And whenever you put that subject together with the city of New Orleans, it's just a combination you don't want to see. We're not looking at anything like Katrina from 2005, but you know, sometimes you just see storms close to New Orleans and you get nervous just from muscle memory, right? You just kind of get a little nervous given what happened, 11 years ago now? August, yeah, 11 years ago. Anyway, all right, then it looks like it'll weaken. Is that 11 years?
21.
Like I said, 21 years. Okay, I'm off by 10. 21 years. 11. 11 is when I started here. 21 years. I was working in Minnesota at the time. Thank you, Lauren. Math. All right, moving on. Temperatures today in the upper 70s generally, maybe 80 or so in Niagara Falls. Some hazy sunshine with some increasing clouds, and that'll be the story for the day today. Now, tomorrow is when we have the storm threat. The Storms Prediction Center put us under a slight risk of severe weather. That's level 2 out of 5 levels of alertness. If you recall, Saturday, we had an enhanced risk. We hadn't had one of those around here since 2024, I believe, which math would tell me was 2 years ago, right? Did I get that right? Nailed it. All right. That day, I'll never forget it. It was in July, I believe, of 2024, in Eden, had an EF2 tornado that day. So that's kind of comparing what the last time we had an enhanced elevation of alertness to tomorrow. We're under a slight risk, and it looks like that means the potential is there for strong to severe storms. Strong winds, some downpours are possible. In fact, there could be some localized flooding with some slow-moving storms or storms that kind of move over the same area, a couple of them, let's say, and that could produce some localized flooding issues. And like on Saturday, there is a little spin in the atmosphere that suggests a tornado, a small local tornado is possible, okay? We've already had confirmed 3 this season. Of course, 1 was in March and 2 in April, I think it was. It was early in the season. Anyway, that's something we're going to have to watch out for tomorrow. So let's get to future look. Today looks fine. Sunny with some high clouds increasing later on. Mostly cloudy tonight. And then for tomorrow, the first signs of some rain will come in the morning with some, I have a hunch I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and there will be some ferocious looking thunderstorms to our west that will weaken as they get here and may even fall apart completely. But we have a chance of some showers and maybe a rumble of thunder tomorrow morning. That passes, and then there could be a few more waves of shower chances, maybe in the afternoon and then later in the day into the evening. And now the timing and the placement of these storms is something that you can generally do, but to pinpoint exactly when and where is kind of tough, especially when you're still 24 hours away. But you get the idea. A very good day to stay sky aware tomorrow with those storms, most likely in the later afternoon and early evening. But again, there could be some activity in the morning. And then on Tuesday night, it should dry out, followed by a push of cool air for this time of the year, certainly on Wednesday. I think much of the day on Wednesday will only be in the 60s as the showers decrease. With that cloud deck, though, on Wednesday, and the cool temperatures, there might be a sprinkle or a little rain shower. All right, rain totals, always a better idea to get a range from this. To say that Buffalo will get exactly that amount and Batavia exactly that amount doesn't always mean that's exactly where the heaviest rain will be, but the places that do get the heaviest rain could see, a quarter, half of an inch of rain. If you think about it, in some spots it could be significantly more than that. I think about last Saturday, we have a weather watcher in Wilson, and that weather watcher reported 6+ inches of rain on Saturday. So that can give you an idea of what stronger thunderstorms or a couple of them moving over the same area can do. Tomorrow's temperatures with the scattered thunderstorms will be in the mid to upper 70s. And in terms of rain chances, tomorrow is kind of it. A slight chance of a sprinkle or a shower on Wednesday, and then it looks dry for the remainder of the week and into the weekend. There are signs that a weak cold front may be nearby on Sunday or Monday, and that's when we could see another shower chance. This is the best news of all, in my humble opinion, is that we have one little spike in humidity. That's tomorrow. That's with the addition of the rain and thunderstorms. But then we go right back down into the comfortable range with low humidity levels Wednesday and all the way into the weekend. And speaking of the weekend and into next week, it does appear the weather pattern is going to kind of get stuck in a normal to slightly below normal range for the eastern lakes and into the eastern seaboard. This is basically for next week, generally, a sign that temperatures are going to heat up in the center part of the country and out west, but a cooler dip in the jet stream will prevail next week and keep our temperatures very comfortable. So for today, sunny and mild, 77. Tonight, mostly cloudy, 66. And for tomorrow, scattered thunder showers, 78. 7-day forecast. Scattered thunderstorms tomorrow, lingering clouds on Wednesday, upper 60s, low 70s. Thursday through Saturday look gorgeous. 70s turn to low 80s, and then it looks like low 80s on Sunday. Here's a live look. Where are we? We are, Buffalo, that's a good spot to be. You got the hazy sun, a beautiful day. More on the smoke. Our smoky skies. That's coming up next.
Welcome back to Beyond the Forecast. So we talked a lot about that wildfire smoke last week. It gave us some pretty bad air quality. Patrick talked about that. This is kind of a live look at generally where some of that heaviest smoke is. Again, areas like Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana are dealing with that. But I want to talk about what that kind of does to how things look outside. Obviously, we talk a lot about how it feels, the effects that it can have on our body. But how does it impact what an otherwise nice summer day might look like. I mean, today is a gorgeous day. We have those crystal clear blue skies, but often when we have that haze, it'll look maybe milky, white, or even orange. But why is that? So first, let's kind of talk about why our sky is blue. To begin with, obviously there is the visible light spectrum going from red to violet. The red has the longest wavelengths and the shortest frequency, whereas then the violet has the shortest wavelength and the greatest frequency. And this really comes into a play when we're talking about something called Rayleigh scattering. That's the type of scattering that is done by molecules that are significantly smaller than the wavelength of a given spectrum of light. So our atmosphere is mostly nitrogen and oxygen. That's about 98% of our atmosphere. And so nitrogen and oxygen on a typical day are what are going to be doing that scattering of light, because obviously white light is what is coming from the sun. That light interacts primarily with nitrogen and oxygen molecules, and then it is scattered. But the thing about Rayleigh scattering is that there is an inverse proportion with respect to the wavelength. So the longer the wavelength is, the less effectively it is scattered. So our shorter wavelengths, like the blues, the indigos, and the violets, those are the ones that are most effectively scattered when it comes to Rayleigh scattering. So when that sunlight comes in, it's really those bright blues that we're seeing scattered. That's why the sky typically is blue, because of those shorter wavelengths. Because if you kind of notice that equation, the wavelength is raised to the power of 4 in the denominator, so it makes a huge difference with respect to a shorter and longer wavelength. I forgot to change the title of this. That's not what this is about, but I do want to talk about how also sometimes our skies look red, specifically during sunrise and sunset, and that has to do with the amount of atmosphere that light has to travel through. So when the sun angle is more directly over us, that scattering obviously exists in the atmosphere and we see that beautiful blue sky. But around sunrise or sunset, you see that light actually has to travel through more of the atmosphere, and when it's scattering, it's actually getting scattered out of that visible light that is going to meet our eyes. So the light that we see around sunrise and sunset, when the sun is particularly low in the sky, scatters out a lot of that blue. So that's why we see a lot of those reds and oranges in the sky. Again, this is with respect to Rayleigh scattering. But you do notice, though, hopefully, I don't know if it's showing fully on this graphic, but when we have that smoky haze in the sky, often it'll look a lot whiter, milkier, and then when that haze tends to be thicker, it can even start to look very orange. So why is this? That is because of something called me scattering, which is different from Rayleigh scattering because of how big the given particles are that the light is interacting with. And the thing about me scattering is that it is a lot more equal with respect to how it scatters. A lot of those particles that partake in me scattering are the same size or greater than the wavelength of the given color of light with which it is interacting, so it just scatters it pretty equally. This is very similar to something that happens in clouds. The water droplets are much larger than, obviously, an oxygen or a nitrogen molecule, even bigger than the particulates that tend to do that me scattering when it comes to when we have that wildfire smoke. But just to give you an idea, that's why clouds are white. This is from a different graphic, but the idea that we have those larger droplets considerably bigger than the wavelength of the light that's interacting with it, so it is going to mix those colors nicely. So that's why clouds look white. All of those colors are kind of scattered equally. So that's what happens when we have that haze, and it's generally thinner. I mean, you saw last week a lot of those days, it looked like we just had an overcast sky when we had initially forecast for beautiful blue, clear skies. It's not that there were clouds in the sky, it was that smoke, but to us, it kind of just looked like we had clouds covering the entirety of the sky because those particles that were scattering the light were acting very similarly to how we can see those water droplets in clouds scattering the light, creating the more white look to the sky. But then there are those orange skies. Why does that happen? Obviously, it looks very apocalyptic. It looks like it is Mars when that happens. But that typically occurs when it is a lot thicker with respect to that smoke. You know, I talked about why at sunrise and sunset we tend to see those reds and oranges in the sky compared to those beautiful blue skies. It's kind of a similar concept. Now there are more particles that are scattering out more of that light. Scattering is generally equal, but not quite. So it does end up scattering out more of that blue light. So we're left with more of those oranges and reds. That's why I even did change the color of the sun. If you did look up at the sun on those days when we had that wildfire smoke, it was probably easier to look at. Not that you should, because it still can damage your eyes even if it's not causing you to squint, but it is scattering out more of those blues and yellows. And so the sun does also look red as well as a result of some of that scattering. Now that's just a brief overview of how kind of the different particles in our air can affect what our sky looks like. But I think it's always very interesting because so many people last week were like, wow, look at all those clouds.
Right, you said, like, hold on.
Not clouds.
That is very, and by the way, I use that term, me scattering, in conversation. Patrick, how you doing? Me, kind of scattering.
There you
all
go.
over the place.
Oh, we'll be back.
All right, so this is what makes Lauren brilliant. Is this looks like just a regular alphabetical sentence, but to her it's math. And
no, I mean, it's not even really math, it's just measurements. I wanted to show kind of the idea of how different those particles in the wildfire smoke are with respect to size to the molecules that will then do the Rayleigh scattering. So 2.5 micrometers is generally what a lot of that particulate pollutant that we look at for the wildfire smoke, whereas then in oxygen molecule is what this is, generally 3.5 times 10 to the negative 1 nanometers. Now, yes, nanometers, micrometers, what's the difference? I did show kind of a conversion.
Huge difference.
So 2.5 micrometers for the particle, 3.5 times 10 to the negative 4
That's like the difference
micrometers. I mean, this is like, it's a huge difference with respect to how large those particles are, and that's why it matters so much with how it then affects the type of light that it's going to scatter most effectively.
Interesting, interesting. You know, and not only was there smoke in the sky, but a lot of people were reporting like even like an ashy debris on their vehicles. Because in some spots, the smoke or the particulate matter was making it down.
It did start to get a little bit low. So yeah, that particulate is definitely something that we look at with that wildfire smoke. Also worth noting though, yesterday, ozone was actually the greater pollutant. That's how much our skies had cleared out with respect to the wildfire smoke.
And ozone you can't see. Impressive. We'll see you again on
Friday.